It's time to get excited. You know why? I'm going to talk about economics. Yeah, that's exciting, right? Yeah, say yes. Give me a thumbs up. Stick around. Hi, welcome back. My name's Joe Brown. I'm a realtor with Century 21, List with Beggins, located in South Tampa. Thank you so much for being here with me today. So when I did my video last week, which was the market update looking at August, I said I'm going to do a video just talking about the economy and economics and all that. I did one maybe a year ago, and I thought it's a good time for an update. So let's just start at the basic, right? So there's really two issues affecting the housing market right now. Number one is mortgage rates. Number two is the lack of supply. Well, let's take a look at mortgage rates first, because mortgage rates really reflect what's going on in the economy. And if you've watched the news, heard the news, it's really a matter of inflation. So there are two types of inflation. There's a pull inflation, which means there's so much money in circulation. And when there's money in circulation, that means individuals and businesses and companies have more money to buy things, so there's higher demand, and that higher demand is pulling prices up. That's pull up inflation. Well, then there's also push up inflation, which means that the cost of goods, the cost to produce goods, is more expensive. And because of that, the goods themselves cost more. So the cost to make the goods is higher, which pushes the price of the goods higher. So we are living in a situation when both exist. We do have the pull-up inflation and we have the push-up inflation. And so let me share with you this chart. So talk about how much money is in circulation. Well, look at this chart here. But what do you see? So this chart goes back, I think maybe 10 years. And you see the past 4 years, just how the money in circulation has really shot up. So there's been a lot of money put in circulation. Well, the federal government, because they want to control inflation, they want inflation only to be at 2% per year. So let me back up even further. The way they track inflation is they look at something called the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. And the CPI looks at thousands of products across the nation, right? And so they'll compare the price of milk in Florida to the price of milk in Texas to the price of milk in Wisconsin. And they'll track that over time. And so they want the price, the overall CPI, to be at 2% per year. Well, if you remember a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago, it was at 9%, over 9%. So the Federal Reserve started raising interest rates in order to bring inflation down. And we're not quite at 2%. We're between 3.5 and 4. That's where we are right now. Last I heard it was 3.7. Jerome Powell wants to get to 2. So we think there will be another interest rate hike. Well, why does the Federal Reserve raise rates to lower inflation? Because they want people to stop spending money, right? They do, because when you spend money, it keeps the money in circulation, and they want to take money off the table. even though interest rates are higher, people are still spending. In fact, I want to throw this other graph up here, and it shows credit card debt. Credit card debt right now, for the first time, went over $1 trillion nationwide. So here's what happens, right? Cost of goods is more expensive, but people have not changed their spending habits. So they are spending more. They can't afford more, but they're spending more. And so that adds to the debt. And so they put it on the credit card. So here's the problem with credit, right? And this is just a snapshot. When I was a principal, I shared this with students. I have $100, but I want to buy something that costs $150. I don't have $150, I have $100. So I borrow $50. Well, next time I get paid, I have to pay back that $50. So I have $100, pay $50 back, I now have $50. But I still want to buy something that costs $150. But now I only have $50, so now I have to borrow $100 to get what I want. So now I get paid $100, I have to put all of it to my debt. I don't have anything left. That's the problem with credit. You are borrowing against the future for something now. Now, with purchases like homes or automobiles, absolutely makes sense. But for other purchases like eating out, or I want a new suit, or I need new shoes, or maybe a new purse. Not that I carry purses, but you get the idea, right? People have continued their spending habits even though they cost more and people's wages may not have gone up to the same degree as the cost of the goods. So interest rates have increased because the federal government, the Reserve, wants people to curb their spending habits. They don't want them to spend as much. So the way to do that, number one, is charge higher interest. Number two is to put incentives in place for saving, right? So if you look at savings rates are higher to take money off of circulation. And people will move their money into into a vehicle, whether it's CD or savings account that's paying more. And people say, oh, I can leave my money there and get a nice return. So here I want to show you a couple graphs. One is showing money in circulation. You see that over the past 10 years, how it's really expanded. But I did a close-up of just the past year. So look at this. And so what do we see at the tail end? That the money in circulation has come down about $20 billion. Now, to you and I, we say, wow, $20 billion, that's a lot. But on the whole scheme, if you go back to that first chart, it's just a blip. You can barely notice. When you look at that short term, you see $20 billion has come out of circulation, which is good. That's what the Federal Reserve wants, to get more money out of circulation. Now, I want to shift and talk about mortgage rates, and it is tied to savings rate. That as more people are interested in saving money because savings rates are higher, now there is right now an inverse yield, which means the short-term yield, the 2-year Treasury, is yielding more money than the 10-year Treasury. And economists don't like that. That's an inverse yield, kind of signals a recession maybe ahead. But it also signals that in the short term, interest rates are going to be higher than in the long term, which is a positive sign. But, and I've said this before on past videos, mortgage rates track the 10-year Treasury. So let me put this chart up, and this shows over the past, I think, 10 years, comparing the blue line at the bottom is the 10-year Treasury yield. The red line up above is the mortgage rates. And you can see how they track each other, that they're almost parallel. What's interesting, so if you go throughout time, you'll see the gap between the blue and red. Sometimes it expands, sometimes it contracts, it expands, it contracts. And where are we now? It's pretty expanded. So some people in the real estate industry, some loan officers, think that mortgage rates could come down if that gap constricts, right? So right now it's maybe a 4-point gap. And if it comes down to a 3-point gap, interest rates may come down even though the 10-year Treasury stays the same. I will tell you, just 2 hours ago, Freddie Mac came out with the new mortgage rates for the next week, and they inched up slightly. So last week they were 7.12. Today it was 7.18. So just minimal. You know, on a $300,000 home, you may talk $5 a month. I just made that up. Don't hold me to it. But that slight change really doesn't affect your pocketbook that much. But here's a critical piece, and it's your individual credit score, right? So I did a video on this quite a while ago. I'll put a link to it here on credit score. What is your credit score? And credit scores range, you know, from 500s all the way up to 850. The higher the credit score, the better your rate will be. So even though I told you Freddie Mac right now, the prime rate is 7.18, I know people whose credit score is around 630, 640, and the mortgage rates they're getting are over 9%, 9.2% for mortgage. Now, keep in mind, if rates come down, you can refinance. But that's the reality a lot of people are facing right now, is getting a 9% mortgage. Now, my wife and I, when we bought our first house, our mortgage rate was 9.5%. So it's not unheard of. Back in the early 80s, they were 18%. So the economy, right, the inflation factors, rising interest rates, treasury yields, credit card debt, it all goes together, right? So here's some advice from Joe Brown. Number one, if you're a person with credit card debt, stop. Just stop. Try and pay it off, because the reality is your credit card interest rate it could be close to 20, depending on your credit card. So pay that off as quickly as you can. Ideally, you don't carry a balance. Now, it's different if you use a credit card to pay it off every month. That's different. But if you use credit card knowing you have to pay it over time, then you get in trouble. So number one, cut back on credit card debt. Try and pay off your credit card as quickly as you can. That will absolutely help your credit score, okay? Don't keep taking a lot of credit cards either, right? Just narrow it to a couple. Keep them for a long time, and pay them off as quickly as you can. Work on your credit score, improve that credit score, because when you go to buy a house, the better the credit score, the better mortgage rate you're going to get. So, and credit score looks at number of cards you have, number of debts you have outstanding. Are you delinquent on any of your bills? Have you taken new cards out? So, watch that video I gave the link to, but improve your credit score. It'll give you lower mortgage rates. Be patient. So right now the mortgage rate is 7.18. I showed you the graph of how much money is in circulation. Right now we're facing that pull up inflation because there's so much money in circulation right now, and there is a lack of supply, right? We have supply chain issues for a lot of different products, but even for houses, we have lack of supply. We absolutely have lack of supply for houses. So that's that pull up. There's money out there, lack of supply. It's pushing the price of homes up. General economy, we're facing higher price costs of goods, so that's pushing inflation up. I think we're going to face these higher rates, higher interest rates, higher mortgage rates, probably for another year. Maybe late into 24. But now they may drop below 6. They may drop below 7. But I still think we're going to be in the range of 6s for probably another year. So just be patient. As I said in last week's video, if you find a house you really want, then yes, buy the house, marry the house, you can date the mortgage, change the mortgage as rates drop. But don't buy a house because you have to buy a house. And understand, a lot of renters are feeling this pinch, right? Because rents are higher, so they're paying more money for rent. They're paying more money for other goods. And those renters who are saving money to buy a house, they're now saving less, which is going to take them a longer time to save for a house, right? It becomes a vicious cycle. So just be patient. I said the word cycle, right? It comes and it goes, it ebbs and it flows. Be patient because the cycle will turn. Rates will come down. Inventory will increase, right? So sometimes it's a waiting game. But keep your eye out. If you're looking to buy a house, keep your eye out. Have an agent looking for you. We'll keep informed. So listen, I do enjoy talking about the economy. I don't necessarily like living in it, but I enjoy talking about it, trying to help people understand where we are and where we're going. If you have questions, reach out to me. Go to my website, joebrownc21.com. Click the Contact Me button. You can send me an email. On my site, you can search for homes. You can read my blogs. I posted 2 new blogs this week. You can check those out. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. Have a great week.